He has gone through depression, drug, alcohol abuse, emotional rage, and divorce. Today, he's a successful professional leader in the food industry. He's a full-time single father of 3 daughters. He's the founder of Big Lake Vision, a speaking, training, and coaching organization. He is certified as a speaker, coach, and trainer by Les Brown. He is a co-author of the book, Les Brown Changed Our Lives. The title of his new book is Breaking Out of Your Self-Made Prison. He has shared stages with Les Brown, Ona Brown, and Johnny Wimbury. Ladies and gentlemen, Jayson Gerald.
Thank you, Farookh Sensei. I'm happy to be here, very honored. When I started this journey 8 months ago, I never thought I would have this opportunity to be here with you of a platform. So a great amount of gratitude to you for this. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jayson. Thanks a lot. It's an honor for me to have you on board. I know that's a different time zone there in the United States and here in India, but thanks a lot for taking your time and being here. Jayson,
absolutely.
You have gone through different stages in your life. You've gone to the peak and you've gone to the valleys of it, if I put it that way. You've gone through depression, you've gone through drug, you've gone through alcoholic abuse, and you've gone through emotional rage, and you've gone through at last with a divorce. How did you change your life? How are you the person today? Because you are an entirely different person. You have been a successful person now. So how did that happen? Just take us through that valley, and how did you take off from there?
Well, Farookh, it was an interesting journey, definitely. At the rock bottom, as I call it, in my life, as you'd mentioned, I had been going through divorce. I had a serious dependency on drugs and alcohol. I was working minimum wage jobs. It was very hard to afford my bills. I ended up losing my house. I could not see my daughters every day like I wanted to because of the divorce. And it got to a point where there wasn't necessarily one main event that really flipped that switch for me. The closest one that I could think of was in the middle of winter here in Michigan. It can get very cold in February. And I remember coming home from work and walking into the house and realizing that it was pretty cold in there. And I went to flip on the lights and nothing happened. And I was alone at this time. I lived by myself. And when I started thinking about it, I realized that I had not paid my electric bill, and they had sent shut-off notices, and I still did not pay it. And so in the middle of winter in February in Michigan, where it was 28 degrees Fahrenheit outside, I had no electricity. When I looked at the temperature of the house, it had already gone down to 50 degrees. So there's not much to do when it's cold and there's no lights, there's no electricity. So I went to bed early, probably around 8 o'clock at night on a Friday. When I woke up Saturday morning, inside the house was 36 degrees. And I was cold. I threw on extra clothes to try to stay warm, grabbed a blanket. I grabbed a bunch of different candles and lit them on a table in front of me. And I sat in the living room trying to get warm by some candles. And it, as you can imagine, it didn't work very well. And so as time went by, I'm not sure if it's because of how cold I was, but I think I didn't start thinking very clearly, because I had this great idea of what I thought at the time is that I still had hot water, because I had city water. The water heater still had hot water in it. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go into the bathroom, close the door, and I'm going to turn on the hot water in the tub and let the tub fill up with hot water. It would create steam and warm the air, and I could bring my candles in there, and I'll just hang out in there. I'll be fine. Well, after about 20 minutes of doing that, I start to realize, as the whole room is fogged up because of the cold air meeting the hot water, condensation's collecting on everything, the walls, the mirror, and myself. So at this point, as I'm sitting on the toilet staring into a candlelight, dripping with condensation, not only am I cold, but I'm now sopping wet, something happened where I just said, you know what? I can't live like this anymore. I have to stop losing. I cannot go on like this trying to live a meaningful life when I'm doing these types of things to myself, because the things that I did and the conditions that I lived in were all a result of the poor decisions that I made in my life. So I do think back to that point somewhat fondly as what could have been a pretty significant turning point for me in my life, was realizing how low things had gotten and that it was time to start making a serious change. And what I really did from that point on for the next year was transformational. I tend to think that I killed my former self, because during this year, I quit doing the drugs, I quit partying and the drinking and smoking and all of that. And I really started concentrating on educating myself as best I could through books and online training, and trying to rise up in the profession that I was in at the time, or I still currently am, in the food industry. And not only that, but working on my physical health and my mental health through the reading. And whenever things got tough for me, or I felt I would start to struggle, I'd go for a run, or I'd go work out. And I ended up getting in pretty decent shape, much better than what you see right now, because I didn't stick with it forever. But I mean, that really helped keep me focused and give me energy. And that allowed me to be able to move forward with the mental piece in growing and learning in the food industry. And at that point, like I mentioned before, was working minimum wage. I was doing menial jobs, and I eventually was able to work myself up to a supervisor position. And then I started working my way into quality assurance, food safety, just going up as high as I could in the food chain at the particular company I was at. And then when I reached a ceiling where I wasn't going fast enough for what I wanted to do, I started looking for work elsewhere and jumped into a management role. And I did the same thing there, learned as much as I could, bettered myself, read, did everything I could. And eventually I've ended up in a corporate director's role in the food industry. And it's been a great journey for me. And I'm very thankful for the opportunities I've had. But it all started with a mindset change that I had to make. And I know a lot of people talk about it, especially people in the speaking industry and coaching. And when you really think about it, the concept is really, really simple. Right? To do the things that you need to do in order to be successful, it's not science. It's very, very simple. But it is incredibly difficult to do if you don't have the proper mindset. And that's what I would take a wild guess and say 80% of the population, at least in the United States, don't understand, is that mindset has to be there in order to do the things that you want to do.
Exactly correct. So today, do you feel proud of yourself?
Absolutely. I know I've come a long way, and I've done a lot of amazing things considering the circumstances that I've put myself in. I'm not going to say the circumstances I was handed or given, because I think a lot of those things we have control over. Some things, it is fate. Things happen, bad things happen, but it's all about how you react to them that's going to determine the outcome and where you end up in life. So I'm very proud of where I was and where I am now, but I'm also the type that, and I've realized this lately, that I will never, ever be satisfied, because once I reach a certain point to where I thought 4 or 5 years ago was my pinnacle, that's my peak, that's where I want to go. By the time I get there, I'm like, this is cool, this is great, but I could do this, and then I could do this. And it might be a bad thing, I'm not sure, but I think I'm going to be the type that I'm never going to be satisfied until I'm ready to fall over dead. I'm satisfied and happy, yes, but I'm always going to want to reach for the next level, or try something new, or do something else. I think that's just who I am.
Jayson, take us through 3 things that you change in order to change you. What are the 3 changes you brought in your life in order to change the Jayson who you were earlier?
It's a very good question. I like that question because it wasn't until somewhat recently when I started thinking about that, when I'm looking back in those past years and I'm going, what is it that people do, or what is it that I did in order to change myself? And I think, number one, the most important thing for people who are in a position like I was, where you're beat down, you're at rock bottom, you don't think there's any way out, you're feeling hopeless. A lot of those things that happen to you that seem to hold you back are related to you not being able to let go. And let me explain a little further. A lot of people are angry. They're sad. They're disappointed. There are things that happen in their life that they, for whatever reason, cannot let go of, and they hang on to them as if it's their life depends on it. They hang on to that pain and that anger that they've experienced in their life. And it becomes, in a strange way, kind of comforting for them. I found that being angry and disappointed in things that had happened in my life, it was comforting to hang on to. And it's probably because you can use that as an excuse for why you're not doing well, why you're not successful, why aren't you paying your bills, why are you sitting in the bathroom on the toilet staring into candles trying to stay warm. Mm-hmm. It's because I was hanging on to all of that anger, that hostility, the disappointment that I had experienced in my life and never learned to let it go. Mm-hmm. I kept everything bottled up. I hung on to every single one of those things. And until I reached the point to where I was able to start letting some of those things go, letting go of the anger I had over the less than ideal relationship I had with my father, letting go of the anger I had through my divorce, letting go of the disappointment I had growing up and not having the friends I wanted to have or being as popular as I wanted to be, letting go of that need to feel accepted if I drank or did drugs or things like that. The number one thing was letting go of all that baggage, because it doesn't do you any good. The only thing that stuff does is hold you back.
Yep.
And I discovered that by letting go, I started to feel a sense of freedom from it. I didn't have that weight on my shoulders all the time. I didn't have those things holding me back mentally, telling me that I wasn't good enough to do something, or there's no way you're going to be able to achieve those things. Letting go was almost like a drug in itself, because it felt so good to let go of that garbage. And there might be a couple of things that you might not be able to quite let go of completely. And I did have a few of those things, but what I did with that then is whatever I couldn't let go of, whatever I was still lingering, that was still lingering in my mind, I used it for fuel to push me forward. And I think that's important to understand, that there may still be some things that you can't completely let go of, but you can control how it makes you feel. And you can use that for fuel to, if somebody says you can't do something, use that for fuel to prove them wrong. Use that type of thing to push you forward when things get tough and you are challenged to the point to where you're not sure if you can do it. It's somewhat difficult to explain, but that's how I've done it. The second thing I had to do and realize was I had to find my passion. I spent so many years not knowing what my passion was. Where am I going in life? What really makes me happy? As a child, my dream was to, when I grow up, I just want to be happy. And a lot of people say that, and that's great to have. But if you don't have it narrowed down to a specific, what does your happiness look like? What does your passion look like? You'll be drifting. And I drifted for many, many years before I realized what my passion was and what it is that truly means happiness in life. And I am 1000% convinced that finding your passion and doing something with it is the key to a happy life.
Absolutely.
I have no doubt about that. And so once you let go of your anger, you let go of your disappointment, your frustration, you find your passion. And then the third step was taking massive action.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was always a big deal to me too, because I was very much an underachiever. I look back and I realize I had a lot of potential, but I didn't use it because I was afraid of failing. I know Les had talked about it quite a bit, and that's one of the things that kind of caught my ear when I heard him speak was I would set goals at very low. I'd set that bar very low because, my way of thinking was as long as whatever I do, if I don't fail, then I'll be successful. Mm-hmm. And if I set the bar low, I should be able to be successful. I should be able to achieve that goal. I never once dreamed that I should set that bar up here and take 7 or 8 stabs at it to try to clear that goal. And the failing part would be okay. Failing was not okay to me. I did not want to be a failure. And so I would just set the bar low, never realizing at the time that just because you don't get it on the first, second, third, 7, 8 times, if you don't get it, does not mean you failed. When you fail, it's because you quit. You gave up. And there are a lot of things that I look back in my life that I would say, I could have done if I would have stuck it out. And I see that a lot with people every day. Mm-hmm. And part of my passion is helping people realize that. There are so many folks that I come in contact with every day that don't realize that they're just going through the normal day, punch into work, punch out of work, go home, sit on the couch, do bare minimum because they think that that's just what life is, that they've already lived their life. This is the normal. This is what I'm going to do for the next 40 years until I die. Mm-hmm. Like some I've heard before, people die when they're 21 or 25 years old, but they don't get married until they're 60. I see that everywhere. Absolutely. And part of my passion is trying to reach out to those types of people and show them or share my experience with them to let them know I was the exact same way. And it was not that long ago that I had that same exact mindset, floating through life, not making an effort to get more out of life. And if I can help 1, 2, or 1,000, 1,000,000 people make that switch like I did to change the mindset, that will make life worth living for me. I mean, that's really where my passion comes from, is being able to help people realize that. And as I was a child growing up, your parents would tell you, well, you can be anything you want when you grow up. But when you're a child and your parents say it to you, at least for me, I was always skeptical because, mommy and daddy will tell me anything, tell me I'm handsome, tell me I'm good looking and that I'm smart, but they're my parents. They have to tell me that. Mm-hmm. So I didn't believe it. And looking back now, I really wish I would have believed it because I wasted many years. I like to refer that time when I was in my late teens to my later 20s. I refer to that time period as my roaring 20s because I was just out of control. I mean, no direct path, no clear path, nothing positive going on. And that experience, that's made me who I am. So in a way, I'm grateful that I experienced that because I can relate to so many people now because I've experienced the same thing. But then again, I look back and say, well, I wish I could have done that in maybe 5 years instead of 10 years. But it is what it is. I am where I am today now because of it. But those are important times for me to remember and to be able to recognize that in other people as well when I want to try to reach out and offer help if they're willing to accept the help.
Wow. Jayson, there's an English saying that tell me your friends and I'll tell who you are. So how important is the people around you, the people that you mingle with in your life that made or that changed the Jayson who you are today?
Well, the people are extremely important, and that took me a long time to realize too, because I'm naturally very introverted. And I never was a really big social butterfly. The people and the friends that I did have or do have are very close to me, but there are very few of them. And until recently, when I started expanding into this area, I had to sit down with myself and have a serious conversation and say, you know, Jayson, we understand you don't like being around a bunch of people all the time, and you don't like meeting strangers, and you don't like social events, but if you want to do what you got to do, you need to lighten up, buddy. So here I am, an introvert, developing and working on some extroverted characteristics and some skills. And when I started to meet some of these people, like Antonio T. Smith Jr., I just found out several weeks ago that he's actually an introvert too. And I never would have recognized that, because he's been able to develop that skill to be very outgoing and social and, friendly with people. But he tells me, at the end of the day, you go home and you're just ready to be alone, just sit back, drink a beer, whatever it is, and relax because it exhausts you. And I'm like, yeah, I can relate to that. And it's not that I don't like people. It's just for whatever reason that I'm programmed that it can be exhausting for me. But I still like to talk to people and meet these people. And I got to tell you, the people, like I said before, the people I've met in these last 8 months have been amazing and have made coming out of my shell in that aspect much, much easier, because I learned so much from them and what they've gone through and their success stories. And it just really brightens up my face when I talk about them, because they mean a lot to me.
Jayson, Les Brown has changed your life. And I know that you are a co-author of one of those books.
Yes. I with Patrick Busingi, and he had announced to several people that he was going to put this book together of several people's story on how Les Brown changed their life. And I thought this was a good opportunity to write something out and submit it. Again, I didn't have high hopes of having my story picked, but I wrote from the heart, and I wrote it in one night, because it really was just a short story. And I won't go into too many details. You'll have to get the book. I know everybody will, but what it really boiled down to is how Les changed my life was one of his speeches that I had come across and I heard, and the gist of what he was saying was that most people don't really do anything in their lives. They raise a family, they earn a living, and then they die. And I remember when I heard that for the very first time, it literally stopped me in my tracks. I stopped what I was doing and I just stood there in amazement, because I realized at that point that just described nearly every single person I know in my life, including myself. And I got to thinking, there is more to do. There's got to be more to this. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge family man. I have 3 beautiful daughters. I'm single father, full-time single father. Not I get the girls on the weekend. No, I've got custody, and it's tough. It's tough to do, but I enjoy it. I love it. I have a very good career in the food industry with the position that I have. But at that moment, I thought, I can do more than this. A lot of people look at me and they say, I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can work 50, 60 hours a week and then come home and take care of all those girls. It's gotten kind of easy for me. It's become part of my life. I just do it. And so I realized that I can do this. And if it seems like I've got it down for the most part, I'm not saying that it's completely easy. I mean, we're talking 3 little girls here, but I realized that I had the potential to do more. And it was that point there that I started coming up with these ideas, like, what do I want to do? How do I want to do this? How can I help people? And from there started this idea of my company, Big Lake Visions. And that's in reference to, I live very close to Lake Michigan in Michigan here in the United States. And most people who've never seen it or been on the shores of it, it's the same as looking across the ocean, because you do not see the other side. It's beautiful. It's massive. There's no sharks, but it's always been very inspirational to me and a lot of people who live in the area here, that, you know, when you want to do some serious thinking or work some things out in your head, you go down to the big lake. It's what the locals call it, the big lake. And I would go down there quite a bit and think through some things, process through some challenges that I've had, have visions of what things would look like. And out of that came the name Big Lake Visions. And I thought, you know what, this is how I'm going to carry out my passion. This is how I'm going to take what Les said, what really caught me, and do something more with my life by helping others, by giving value to others, and helping them realize that, you know, what they have doesn't mean that's all there is. There's always more. And that's kind of my business slogan, is to have a vision for more. We can always have a vision for more out of our life. It doesn't have to be what it is. That's just what it is now. There's a potential to have more out of life. And whatever that more is up to you. Whether you want more family, whether you want better relationships, a better career, a bigger house, whatever it is. If you want more love in your life, just have a vision for more, because it's very possible. It's all out there. And all it takes is for you to make the conscious decision to go after it.
You have gone through a lot of experience. Now, before we wind up, what would be the 3 lessons that you would advise to the viewers who are going through the same pit that you have gone through, the same valley that they are going through right now? What would be the very simple, straightforward 3 advice that you would share from your life lesson?
Well, one of them I could think of right off the top of my head, and it's another very simple concept, but I don't think a lot of people realize it, especially when they're in the position that I was in, down in the valley, in the hole, like I like to call it. And that is that no one controls how you feel about something. You have complete control over your feelings, and whether you realize that or not, that may be where the challenge is. But when we say, well, so-and-so made me mad or so-and-so made me sad, that's because you're allowing them to control how you're feeling. And one of the first steps that you've got to be able to master, or to at least get very good at, is controlling how you react to things. It's okay. I'm not saying it's not okay to be angry or to be upset or sad, but there's a way to process those emotions and to not allow them to control you, not allow somebody else to make you feel a certain way, and then you react to it, you lash out, and you make things worse or find yourself in trouble, which I've done on more than one occasion. But once you realize that nobody controls how you feel except for you, that you have the power to control how you react to certain situations, that was a very powerful thing for me as well. And I think that people who are in that type of a situation, once they realize that, that's kind of the beginning step that you can take. Once you can get that mastered, all the other steps are going to come much easier to you. And back to the life-changing piece where I talked about the other 3 things, I truly do think, and this will be repeating a bit, but finding the passion and what it is that you want to do in your life, that is so important to do. And for some people, I don't think they ever find it. And it took me a very long time to figure out what it is. And I probably haven't even mentioned it yet, but my passion is helping others succeed and achieve the things that they want to achieve. But finding that and doing something with it it's a shot in the arm to get out of that hole, to get out of that valley and start climbing the mountain, knowing what it is, knowing Simon's Simon Sinek talks about it.
Start with the why.
Finding your find your why. When I read that book, that was a game changer for me.
Have you read this book by Simon Sinek? It's called Together is Better.
I have not read that one yet.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
With that, finding your why, finding your purpose, that is so important. I can't stress that enough.
The golden circle.
Yes. You'll have to, I don't want to pitch his book too, but it's, everybody already knows about it, I think. But if you're in this business and you haven't looked at that book, or if you're in any kind of business, you have to check that book out. Finding your why is extremely important. Determining what it is that wakes you up every morning.
Yeah.
Why do you do the things that you're doing? And then the third thing that I would keep in mind is that taking action on those things is important. But I think in order to succeed without driving yourself crazy is to make sure that you take a step back periodically and make sure that you're balanced. Mm-hmm. Because if you're focusing too hard in one area and you start to lose control on another, well, let's say if you're focusing on your career too much, and then before you know it, you're losing your grip on your family. You're not spending as much time with them as you should. You're not spending the quality time with them, having those conversations, or making sure your teenage daughter has the opportunity to talk to you and tell you what's bothering her, because she's going through all the growing pains that you were going through not too long ago either, where this whole journey to the bottom started. Stepping back, making sure you're balanced is very important. And when you take a step back and you see that it's not, that you're maybe losing a grip or not giving as much time or attention to some of those other important areas, it's a great time to make a change. Say, okay, I need to put this on pause a little bit, because if I keep my priorities straight, my family, my girls have always been at the top of the list and always will be. Career, whatever else that you've got on your list comes after that. So taking the time to step back and assess your balance, where things are, that's important to your success as well.
Thank you very much, Jayson. Ladies and gentlemen, Jayson.